On to adolescence. So, this is that rapid change. Again, physically, major hormones now kick in. So, you develop acne, body odor, causes that emotional lability. They're still struggling with who are they, where do they fit in, what are their values and morals. Um, and rules in their mind aren't absolute, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then the stages then are identity, role, confusion, and that formative operational thinking. So in that early, they tend to divide adolescence into that middle and late stages. You don't have to memorize that necessarily. It is sort of important to think through that this is the age where they try on different roles with their peers. They are going to be goth one week and they might be the hippie the next week, or they might be totally into K-pop and then try something else. So they're trying on those different roles, and trying to figure out be with that group identity. They want to be accepted by their peer groups, and that is so high and important in their development of a self-concept. They start obviously becoming attracted, I shouldn't say opposite sex here, but they start having sexual desires depending on where they fit in that regard. And they may try on some different roles with that. So they may decide that they're bisexual or asexual or homosexual, particularly, and then go, well, no, that's not really where I was at. So families need to be aware that this is that stage where they're really trying things on to see where do they fit. And then as they grow later into that adolescent, early adult phase, they now have developed more of a sexual identity, career goals, and feel fairly emancipated from that family. Piaget, we've moved to formative operational thinking, which is really basically now they have some abstract thought. They can really think through concepts of infinity, cause and effect. If this does, then this is here. They can begin to develop some sort of hypothesis and come up with a variety of problem solving. The problem with this age is the point at which they're able to abstractly think things through is the point at which they don't care. They believe that they are indestructible. So, if you dare them to jump off of, some very high rock formation into unknown depth of water, they're all for it. Nothing will happen to them. And this becomes very frustrating from a medical point of view when you are caring for kids with chronic conditions, because this is the point that they're sick of their disease, they're fine, there's nothing wrong, they don't need to do anything. And you can see that I mentioned that they're invincible, their risk-taking behavior. Well, let's drag race down the street because nothing's going to happen. Again, that fortunately goes away over time. And again, their abstract thinking becomes much greater as they head into that later teenage, early adult years. Sexual development, again, the Tanner scale is fairly helpful in gauging that. They start getting the boys get testicular enlargement starting around 9.5 to 14 years of age, depending on their age. They begin to develop pubic hair, penile enlargement, axillary hair, facial growth with some voice changes. Not unreasonable, unfortunately, for some boys to develop some breast budding, some gynecomastia, which can be very embarrassing for boys. But again, can be within normal limits, so one just needs to monitor that. Girls get their period about 2 years after breast buds develop. So from a parenting point of view, that's helpful for them to know. They'll also then again begin to develop pubic hair and axillary hair as well. Girls will get that growth spurt just before they start their menses, and then after that they really don't get much increase in their linear growth, which can be kind of upsetting if the girls were expecting to get taller, and then they all of a sudden come in and it's like, yeah, no, you're done. So again, being mindful that you can see that rapid growth, that crossing of growth curves, and that can also be an indication that menses is likely to occur relatively soon. Here is a Tanner scale for you, so you should have some idea of that stage 1 is nothing, and stage 5 is fully developed, and you can see that there is varying changes that you find both in breasts, pubic hair, and then penile elongation and testicle development. Let's see, not a lot to talk about here. Again, it is important to have conversations from a prevention point of view about body hygiene, body piercing, and tattoos. Again, that anticipatory guidance is following through a lot of what we've already mentioned. We're just ramping it up a bit so that we're really looking for signs of depression, signs of suicide, any sign of physical, emotional, sexual abuse, having conversations about DARE behavior. So again, remembering that they are risk takers, and that there are consequences for risky behavior. Again, drug abuse, gang involvement, all of those things need to be talked about in an open fashion with the adolescents as a way to help them have knowledge and feel that they are inclusive in the conversation. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about screening about heads, and it is a teenage risk assessment that looks at what's going on in the home, how are you doing in school, what kind of activities, if any, are you involved with, are you doing drugs, what's your sexual activity, what's your sexual identity, are you having signs and symptoms of depression or suicide, and you can click the assessment there to see what that looks like. Again, it's nice to have a third person approach in your conversation for particular questions. So some people might, do you ever feel that way? Or tell me how you're feeling, as an open-ended question in an effort to get some information from the adolescent who tends not to want to tell you much of anything. And that's the end. The end of the PowerPoint did have some, these came from ChatGPT. I asked it to give me some idea of Erickson and Piaget as far as a compare and contrast. So you can kind of get an idea what ChatGPT can do to help you, and some references.